Good morning and welcome today to our session, India Going Through the Pandemic. And first of all, I want to say good morning to everybody in California and namaste to our friends in India and what other time zones you guys may be in. My name is Warren Cohen. I'm with Blue Diamond Growers. I'm also a member of the Global Market Demand Committee, the GMDC. I'm going to introduce two of our speakers today, presentations, and then I'll go through some housekeeping and some information afterwards. The first speaker will be Julie Adams. Julie Adams is the Vice President of Global Technical Regulatory Affairs. And Ms. Adams joined the Almond Board in 2000 and has been responsible for developing strategies to address technical issues and trade policy. She works closely with the industry, government authorities globally, finding solutions to food safety, phytosanitary requirements, regulatory changes, and other areas impacting worldwide production and shipment of California almonds. Julie's been actively engaged in the India program since its inception. And the following presenter will be Sadarshan Muzandar, he's a regional director for India and also for South Korea and Japan. And as the India regional director for the Almond Board of California, Sadarshan is responsible for driving the growth of almond consumption in the country. In his capacity, he's entrusted with the job of drawing out marketing strategies for India and leading the advertising, communication, and trade stewardship programs as well. Sadarshan also oversees, as I mentioned earlier, our programs in South Korea and Japan as well. You know, India is a great market. It's a critical market for the California almond industry. It is the largest export market for California almonds. And just to put it in perspective, in 2010, California was shipping 84 million pounds of almonds to India. 2019, 256 million pounds of almonds to India. And this year, India is running well ahead of last year's record year. So it's a market that's critical for California, especially with larger crops coming our way in the future. India's had a long-standing tradition with almond consumption and is a very important market to the California almond industry, being the largest export destination. And there's a strong ABC program driving market growth with shipments that have doubled and increased, as I mentioned earlier. So today's presentations will be by Julie and Sadarshan, and they've been pre-recorded. Following the recording, myself, Julie, and Sadarshan will be available live to answer any questions you may have. And we'll also have two additional guests with us joining the Q&A panel. That'd be Emily Fleischman, the Vice President of Global Market Demand and Development at the Almond Board. And Emily leads the strategy and implementation of the board's global marketing investment, including both consumer and trade activities. And Laurel Murrell will be joining us as well. She's the Managing Director of Sterling Rice Group, the Almond Board's lead marketing strategy and research agency, and she'll be available with us. In terms of asking questions for the Q&A, we've requested you place your questions in the Q&A tab that you see on your screen. And these questions will come in privately to the full speaker panel. And throughout the sessions related to technical issues you may be experiencing with the system will be answered by private chat. All other questions we will address live today in the session with time permitting. If there's a chance we're not able to get to all the questions today, in that case, someone on the panel will respond to you privately or at the end of the Almond Board conference, just to make sure that we address all the questions that have been submitted. In addition, Sadarshan, Julie, Emily, who is Vice President of GMDC, will be available from 11 a.m., 12 p.m. at the booth for questions. Now we'll start the presentation. We hope you enjoy it, and then we'll be back. I'll see you afterwards for the live Q&A. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be joining this conference session on India. What I'd like to do is take a few minutes to talk about the regulatory environment that we face in India. For those of you who are working in the market, you know it is an incredible opportunity for the industry to really expand exports. But what we're seeing is India also presents some real challenges when it comes to the technical and regulatory side. So just to cover a few of the issues that we're dealing with, let's start with no objection certificates, NOCs. These really came into play about 5 years ago in 2015. Since then, we've been dealing with customs officials in India trying to get a better understanding of why a negotiable bill of lading really needs a change in the consignee when a contract moves. So this really has been an ongoing issue. We're still trying to get clarification from customs, and at this point, it's still under discussion. Another big area that has come up has to do with goods and services taxes. Now, when this was first introduced in India, we were all very hopeful that having a single tax across the country would make it easier for importers to get involved in the trade. And that has happened. But the fact is that we're looking at different tariff or different GST levels for different commodities. So almonds, for example, are at 12% GST. But if you look at cashews, at peanuts, at walnuts, they're at a 5% GST level. The other question that we're facing is that under the GST, there are provisions for a 0 GST rate for fresh commodities. But it's really not been defined what constitutes fresh. Under the regulations, it should be anything that's unprocessed, which you would think almonds imported in bulk would be considered a fresh product and therefore subject to a 0 GST. We've been providing some comments to the Indian authorities and requesting clarification from the GST Council. We've also been working with other Indian associations to try and get clarification. One of the more recent issues that's come up are certificates of origin. This is something that came about because the Indian authorities in the Food Safety Standards Authority of India had questions about why we didn't have a consistent and uniform format for the COOs. Now, this has been a real conundrum because basically you've had the same format used for numerous years, but for some reason now FSSAI has decided that they have concerns about not having a uniform certificate. USDA Foreign Agricultural Service has been engaging directly with FSSAI, trying to get clarification and also asking for a letter that would explain that this does not require a change in the current certificates that are used by industry. Unfortunately, stay tuned. We still haven't gotten a letter from FSSAI to that effect. Finally, the last point I want to raise, and one of the other key areas that we're dealing with on the regulatory side, has to do with standards. And for those of you who have been involved in the India program, you know this has been an issue we've raised for several years when this was first introduced. Now, while the standard does apply to kernels, the concern is that this could be a precedent for in-shell. If you look at the parameters that have been notified by FSSAI, factors such as gummy, doubles, chipped and scratched, oil content, these are really all quality parameters, things that should be the purview of a commercial contract and not something subject to import control. It adds way too much subjectivity to that process. So this is an area too that we've been raising with FSSAI, pointing to the fact that some of the standards in place for other crops aren't nearly as invasive or extensive as the one for almonds. So again, here too, this is something we'll have to continue to work on. India is an incredible market. The growth potential is just amazing. But as we start looking at where we're going, we have to deal with these regulatory issues that keep coming up. Unfortunately, they're not easily solved, and we're trying to find some creative ways to deal both with the government as well as with the trade to find a solution that's going to work for everyone. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sadarshan. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren, and thank you, Julie, and good morning, everyone. In this segment of the session, I'm going to talk about how the board program is evolving to leverage the opportunities which have been coming our way. I'll begin by talking about COVID-19. As a lot of you know, India is a country which has been severely impacted with the COVID-19 pandemic with 8.7 million cases by 12th of November. The Indian government acted very quickly when COVID came in when they declared a nationwide lockdown. The terms of the lockdown were far more severe than lockdowns which occurred in other countries, and that meant that the economic activity came almost to a grinding halt. And therefore, the first quarter of the year, April to June, the Indian GDP degrew by 24%. As the terms of the lockdown started getting eased up, economic activity has also been building up. But despite that, IMF predicts that by the end of the year, India would still have gone down by 10.3% in the year 2021. But they also expect India to bounce back with 8.8% growth in the next year. The pandemic has also had a severe impact on the psyche and behavior of Indian consumers. People are preferring to have contactless purchases, and therefore we're seeing a sharp growth in the e-commerce space. Also, people have become very concerned about taking care of the health, about the fitness, and about the immunity, and reaching out for products and services which can help them in this direction. For health and immunity, they're reaching out increasingly to foods which promise the same, and many of the foods are coming from tradition or with roots in Ayurveda. For example, people believe and are practicing dissolving turmeric powder in hot milk and drinking it. I think it will be good for health and immunity. According to Google, there's been an increase of 500% in the search for the word immunity. They also did a study in 32 centers which showed that 94% of the people said they would prefer to buy a product which will help them deal with the pandemic. So what does all of that mean for almonds? If you look at the shipments from California to India from August of 2019 to March of 2020, the shipments grew at 12% before the shipments hit what I call the COVID-19 war. Now, with the lockdown in place, the supply chains completely disrupted. Shipments from California to India crashed off. But then, as the lockdown terms started getting improved and the supply chains started returning more towards normalcy, the shipments to India also started increasing. And India ended the year with a shipment of 256 million pounds, which is a growth of 11% of the previous year. And India, for the second year running, was the largest export destination for Californian almonds. This year, from August to October, the shipments have been quite extraordinary. With a shipments of 146 million pounds, there's been a growth of 110% of shipments from California to India this year. What I'm now going to do for the rest of the session is going to talk about what our board program has been during this period and how the board program is pivoted, keeping in mind the changed environment because of COVID-19. But before that, let's understand almonds in India. Almonds have been consumed for centuries in India as part of Indian tradition and part of Indian culture. But because of these strong traditions, it also comes with strong beliefs. There's a strong belief the best time to have almonds is first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. There's a strong belief the best form of having almonds is whole raw almonds cut off and soaked in a bowl of water and peeled in the morning before consumption. It's believed that almonds consumed in this manner are good for brain development and provide energy through the day. So mothers arm their children up in the morning, gave them almonds, hoping they'll do well in school and at play. Almonds are also a traditional gift which is given during the big festival of Diwali. Is also handed around along with wedding invitation cards and are also used for preparing of several Indian sweets and desserts. Almonds holds a very special place in the hearts of the Indian consumers as it is part of the prayer plate and therefore an offering to the gods. But because the traditions also believe having 4 to 5 almonds per consumption occasion is adequate. There is a huge opportunity to increase the consumption of almonds in India because the per capita consumption of registered population in India at barely 0.32 pounds a person is very low as compared to what prevails in countries such as United States, America, Canada and Germany, where it's upwards of 2 pounds a person. Quite clearly, as the economy grows, as people are more disposable income in their hands and as they get more sensitized for health, and the coming of COVID-19 is actually increasing the health sensitization, we can only imagine the upside which exists for the almond market in India. I use the word addressable population. What that means is that share of the population who we conceivably think could be having almonds. And the upside exists not only for the traditional morning consumption, but also the consumption of almonds as a healthy snack. Even today, 40% of the households with children do not have almonds in the morning, and the ones which do, the average frequency is just 2.8 times a week. But with the strong traditional belief of almonds, this can be leveraged to increase the almond consumption growth in the morning. Apart from that, if you look at the consumption by day parts, we find bulk of the consumption happens first thing in the morning after breakfast. After breakfast, the consumption falls very steeply to being only 2 to 13% of people having consuming almonds in other day parts. But we also see a longer term trend as people are getting more sensitized to health and they're reaching out towards healthy snacks. And this is going to be only accelerating, and we've seen it already happening in the last few months after the coming of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, positioning almonds as being a healthy snack alternative to unhealthy snacks we may be having provides a huge opportunity for almond consumption growth. There's also opportunity to increase the gifting of almonds because only 11.9% of the target who gift during festivals are gifting almonds. And almonds has got huge strengths as a gift for both the gift giver and the gift receiver. And I talked about that extensively in the previous conferences, and that can be leveraged for further increase of the gifting of almonds. The health and wellness goals of adults for themselves and for their children are aligned very closely with what are the traditional beliefs or benefits from almond consumption. Adults for themselves and for children want to have a good brain concentration, they want to have good memory, they want to be mentally alert, and they want to be energetic. And these are the same goals we have for the children, and these are the strongly held beliefs about almonds, which can be further leveraged for almond consumption growth. And almonds are very well positioned to capitalize on where the Indians are today. Indians are today looking for success. As what's happened is over the last 2 decades, when the Indian economy has grown fast, more opportunities come up, and Indians sense that this is the time to achieve success, earn a greater income, be better providers for the family, and enjoy better standard of living. And these are aspirations they have even for their children. But they're also realistic that while the opportunities are increasing, there's also a high degree of competition because India has a high population of 1.35 billion. And therefore, to achieve success, one has to perform on a consistent basis. And for that performance, one needs to have a good brain concentration, one needs to be mentally alert, one needs to have good memory, and one needs to be energetic, all of which are benefits associated with almonds. And in that context, we are aptly positioned in the way we're working in India for leveraging this opportunity because the position we have taken for almonds in India is small investment today builds into big success tomorrow. Almonds is a small investment into my and my family's future. Given these opportunities, how is the board program structured to harness these opportunities to increase almond consumption? Now we have different objectives for almonds in the Indian market. First objective is to increase the frequency of consumption, for which we have a family consumption campaign. The creative idea is the best dreams are shared. The whole thought is that nothing makes you strive harder than to achieve dreams that you share with your family. The dreams for a mother could be that the child is a champion in sport as well as in academics, in school, and gets a dream job abroad. The dream for a working man could be to build a dream house for the family and be successful at work itself. The dream for a working mother could be being there for the child when it matters most, maybe in a parent-child sports competition school and winning it along with the daughter while being a winner at work itself. Now, basis this creative idea, there are 3 broadcast executions. One reminding mothers to give almonds to the children every day, and one each to the working man and working woman, reminding them to have almonds every day for their own self-consumption. Now, I've unveiled this whole campaign last year, so what I'm going to do now is to show you one broadcast spot as a reminder of the campaign.
मेरी हुई तेरी हर आरज़ू, मुश्किल राहों पे मैं साथ हूँ, और मंजिल पे ये राह जब पहुँच जाए, सपने मेरे भी पूरे हो जाए। मैं साथ हूँ तेरी मंजिलों पे, मैं साथ हूँ तेरे। प्रोटीन, फाइबर और एनर्जी से भरे बादाम हर रोज।
The second objective is to increase the gifting of almonds, for which we have a Diwali gifting campaign. The position we have is gifting of almonds on a close ratio, again the rationale of which I've explained in the previous conference. And basis this, the creative idea we have is that the most special relationships are those that are multifaceted. And you think about it, if you have a special relationship with someone, the person becomes your friend, becomes your confidant, someone who can criticize you, someone with whom you can share your hopes and dreams, and someone you simply like to hang around with. Basis this creative idea, we have 2 broadcast spots, one showing gifting within the family, wherein we leverage the close ratio between aunts and nephews in India, and the other is showing gifting outside the family, where we leverage a close friendship between 2 friends in office. Now again, since I've shown both these broadcast spots earlier, what I now show you one broadcast spot as a reminder of the
मासी और मेरा रिश्ता जैसे झूले और बचपन का, या जैसे खोजी और खजाने का, जैसे छोटी सी हार में छुपी बड़ी सी जीत का। हमारा रिश्ता समझो जैसे दिवाली और बादाम का, हर रिश्ते में छुपे कई रिश्तों के नाम। इस दिवाली दीजिए सेहत भरे बादाम।
There's an opportunity to educate the consumers to increase the consumption of almonds. Why do I say that? The reason is that since the beliefs about almonds comes from tradition, there's relatively low awareness of benefits which we know from nutrition research is conducted. And therefore, educating the consumers about the rich nutrient profile of almonds, the nutrition benefits from almond consumption, the suitability of consuming it as a snack, as well as relevant portion size will only increase the tendency to consume almonds. There's also another reason to educate the consumers, and that's because of the ongoing pandemic. Currently, the consumers are looking out for foods that promise health and immunity. Now, when the pandemic really came, we had not done any nutrition research which shows the specific effect of and benefit of eating almonds on immunity. However, we know we can make nutrient claims in India. The nutrient claims we can make is almonds are rich in vitamin E and copper, or almonds are a source of zinc, folate, and iron. Independent studies have shown the beneficial impact on maintaining and strengthening the immunity from these nutrients, and that provided us messaging possibility for talking about immunity from almond consumption through its nutrient profile. Now, there are very different tactics we use to educate the consumers, and they're on the slide here. On the extreme left, you see the tactile print editorial. Here, we design the editorial, pay for space, and release the editorial. Then we have a strong nutrition PR program, wherein whenever nutrition research papers published about almonds, we evaluate for relevance for the Indian market, and a relevant we issue a press release. For example, there was a study which showed the beneficial impact on wrinkles of postmenopausal women, and we issued a release, and we got 145 clips across the country. We also have a strong nutrition or media outreach program, where we keep on pitching story ideas to media so they write about us, and we also issue press releases wherein we leverage specific days. For example, the World Heart Day, when the press release contextualizes the need to have almonds every day, leveraging the particular occasion which we are using. Apart from that, we conduct media events which provide a platform to engage with media, build a relationship with them, as well as provides a platform to hand out our messages. And one of the media events I like to talk about is discussion over almonds, badam pe chacha. Now, this is a form of panel discussion, and the topic which we have selected was importance of ensuring family health and nutrition amidst the ongoing pandemic. Now, this is a virtual event, and the panelists included two of the top nutritionists of the country. They also included Emily Fleischman, who's our Vice President Global Market Development, who provided the international perspective. And we also had a celebrity, Soha Ali Khan. Soha Ali Khan is an actress. She's also a mother. She's written a book. She's married to an actor. And she also comes from a highly pedigreed family. Her mother, Sharmila Tagore, was one of the top actresses of her time for several years. Her father, Mansur Ali Khan, was a corresponding captain of the Indian cricket team and also the Prince of the State of Pataudi. Her brother, Saif Ali Khan, has been acting for 25 years in Indian cinema. And her sister-in-law, Kareena Kapoor Khan, is one of the top actresses of India. Keeping all that in mind, whenever Soha Ali Khan says anything, the media takes her with a great degree of interest. And she agreed to join a panel to give her perspectives. Media loved it, and they gave we got 71 clips at high-quality outlets across the country. What I now do is to show you a small clip from the panel discussion to give you an idea of how the event went.
These were things that my mother taught me. And of course, the thing that was a ritual was, soaking the almonds overnight. And then, everyone in the family had their handful of almonds in the morning. And then you were done with it for the rest of the day. Because, of course, when you're young, you forget and you're doing a number of things. So she wanted to make sure that at least the children got their handful of soaked almonds. They got their sort of micronutrients and nutrients. And she knew that at least from that perspective, we were looked after. And that's something I certainly have imbibed. And when it comes to Inaya,
Trade are very important partners for us as we go to the market in India, as they're the people who bring almonds to the country and make it available across the length and breadth of the country. So we have a trade outreach program wherein we try to reinforce confidence in almond protection, smooth market access. We do this by sharing information. We share information about developments in the Californian almond industry. We share information on the status of regulatory and technical issues, and we share information about the marketing program, and we also take feedback from them. So the various tactics to which we do it, one of this is the annual trade conference. So this year's trade conference held in February found over 150 people joining us, with people coming in from different parts of the country to join us for the trade conference. We are also joined by Richard Baycott, our global CEO and president of Almond Board of California, and by Julie Adams, who is a co-panelist with me. What's been really heartening for us is we've seen increasing presence of US packers joining us for the conference as well. We also issue our newsletters to trade from time to time, detailing our program, and the two examples of that on the slide. We've also had a couple of new programs in India, which I'm going to talk about. First is we've initiated a beauty digital program. The question really is, why are we looking at beauty? The reason is traditionally is believed eating almonds is good for skin and hair, and this belief is rooted in tradition as well as rooted in the ancient Indian medicinal texts of Ayurveda. The fact that even application of almond oil in skin and hair seem to be good for skin and hair, and therefore there's a greater credibility around almond consumption, helping out in the beauty benefits. We've also done a study called segmentation study, the last sample study, 4,500 people a couple of years ago, and we showed that apart from brain energy, being good for skin and hair is a very important motivator for enhanced consumption of almonds. And when we talk about beauty, it makes more sense to reach out to the younger women in the age group of 18 to 24, because as opposed to older women, they're stronger believers in the need to turn out well every time they step out of the house. They're stronger believers that being turned out well is helpful for success. They're stronger believers in beauty from inside out, that if you're beautiful inside, if you're healthy inside, it shows up as beauty outside in your skin and hair. And they're also stronger believers in having natural and herbal products. And when we talk about younger audience, it makes more sense to be on internet because the bigger user of the internet than older women audiences. Now, we have started this program on November 15th. We've taken 3 platforms. We've taken YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. What I'll now do is to show you the launch spot which we run across the 3 platforms. We also relooked at the festive period, which is the period leading up to Diwali. That's a very important period for the almond business in India, where a lot of offtake takes place for gifting. Normally, we run a festive gifting campaign, which is the same Diwali spots we were showing you earlier, for 6 weeks leading up to Diwali. But this year, we decided to do things differently, keeping in mind the COVID-19 pandemic, which is ongoing. We realized that with the economy having gone down, a lot of people having lost jobs, there's a lot of pay cuts, that people find it difficult to give to the same extent as what they did in the past years. Also, with social distancing norms in place, it made it more difficult for people to go to each other's houses to wish each other happy Diwali in exchange of gifts. But to some extent, of course, e-commerce will take over the space, but to a large extent, e-commerce is still very small in India, therefore that gifting would be impacted. Also, and the third call we took was that people have prioritized taking care of theirs and the family's health over gifting. But people would obviously continue to have almonds for themselves to take care of their health and nutrition. Therefore, instead of a 6-week festive gifting campaign, we replaced it with a 4-week family consumption campaign to encourage regular consumption of almonds. And in the last 2 weeks, just when the people would be going to the outlets to pick up the Diwali gifts, we ran a broadcast campaign with the Diwali spots, which I shown to you earlier. And we supported it with the internet campaign on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube showing our Diwali spots and to reach out to the more affluent elements of our target. We do have a very strong measures to understand how the program is performing, and one of the ways we do it is through global perception study. In the global perception study, the investigators go to the homes of the respondents and they get the structured questionnaire filled up, and then they analyze the results. And now, since this is done on a yearly basis, it becomes a useful yearly tracker. If we look at the period from 2016 to 19, we can find across all the important parameters, almonds have continued to strengthen themselves in the minds of the consumers. Also, across the key snacking parameters, almonds have continued to strengthen themselves from 2016 to 19. Across all the key areas where we are educating the consumers, we find a strengthening of association of these parameters in the minds of the consumers. And all this has paid off in terms of increased shipments. The shipments last year at 256 billion pounds was a growth of 11% over the previous year, and India retained its position of being the largest export destination for Californian almonds. What is interesting is that the next largest destination, Spain, was at 193 million pounds. So shipments to India were 33% higher than the next highest destination. And as mentioned earlier, that in the period from August to October, we had astonishing shipments of 146 billion pounds, which is an increase of 110% over the corresponding period of the last year. Thank you. And now we move to the Q&A section. As many of you would have been writing questions in the chat, we'll now look at it and start answering the questions. And if anybody has other questions, please continue to putting it into the chat, and we try to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much, Sadarshan. Thank you, Julie, for the presentations. Again, in terms of how to ask questions, we request that you place your questions in the Q&A tab that you see on your screen. These questions will come through privately to this full speaker panel. And throughout the session, questions related to technical issues you may be experiencing with the system can be answered private by chat. So again, all other questions, we'll answer them live. And if we don't get to all the questions today, we'll make an effort to make sure we get them answered and sent back to the person who's asking the questions. So look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, to go ahead and kick us off, there was a question, Warren, for you and Julie regarding the NOCs. Does India handle them with Australia in the same manner they do in the US?
So,
Maybe I'll start.
Go ahead, Julie.
Sorry. I was just going to say, to my knowledge, it does still apply as well to Australia. I've had some conversations with the Australian Almond Board, and they've indicated they've also had problems with NOCs.
Yeah, and for myself, I would agree with Julie. I don't think it's a country specific to the U.S. I think other shippers and from other origins are also having issues.
Great. And then Sadarshan, there's a question around what are the demographics of almond usage in India, specifically by age group? I'm having a hard time hearing Sadarshan. Is it just me?
Well, he may be on mute.
Okay. Sadarshan, we'll give you a second to figure out. I know sometimes this system is a little challenging as you go on and off the different areas.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
You can hear me now? Yeah.
So again, Sadarshan, the question was around what are the demographics of usage?
Yes, so let me explain this. We really went into the data and defined the target which we need to be looking at. And they were identified in terms of the higher propensity to consume almonds. And the essential target consists of women in the age group of 22 to 50 years old and falling in the socioeconomic classification NCCS. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. And we also have for the self-consumption target, men and women in the age group of 30 to 40 in the NCCS A socioeconomic classification. What NCCS A means is households in India are defined by the socioeconomic classification, looks at two sets of parameters. One is by the education of the chief wage earner of the family, and the other is by the number of durables and which durables they own. And the government of India has identified some 10 or 11 durables, and depending on the durables you own, you're classified along with education. So socioeconomic NCCS A classification is really the top end of the market. And that's where we are. That's where our program is focused on.
I think the team on the phone would also love to hear more about all the work that you've done in the segmentation recently too, and looking at next opportunity, because it's not just about demographics. It's also there's also a lot of other layers there.
Yeah, so when we started off and started defining a target, and we really try to understand where almonds comes into India, and it's really part of Indian tradition, as what I was talking about, with mothers giving almonds to the children first thing in the morning because of the benefit of brain energy, which could be leading to the success. Also, the way almonds are purchased in India is part of the monthly grocery buy.
So it's not something like a snack. You go and pick it up from an outlet. There'll be a little bit of that, but bulk of it is a very planned purchase. And the decision of what comes to the grocery buy is really the mother, the woman in the house. She controls the grocery buy, and she controls what is cooked in the kitchen, and she controls what's served out of the kitchen. So she really became the primary person. And since people already knew that they needed to have almonds, all we did in our communication to begin was to remind them to have almonds every day, to give almonds to the children every day so they could do well in life. Later on, we did, when we looked at the target, we did further work on the target, and we realized that we could talk to the self-consumption target, basically adults to have almonds for themselves for the same benefits, and we expanded it to be the family consumption campaign. Since then, we did a segmentation exercise which looked at the psychographics of the Indian consumers, and we identified 3 segments of people to look at, which constitutes 39% of this target, which becomes really the core target we're looking at, for whom we design all our communication, though our media reaches out obviously to a wider set.
Wonderful. And, Sadarshan, there are a couple questions around, looking at it from a geographic standpoint. First of all, do we have data on the consumptions of different states? And also, how are we looking at and targeting southern states in India? As one of the attendees noticed, all the ads seem to be in Hindi.
No, let me explain this. Geographically, we started a program in the north and western parts of the country initially, when we developed a strategy in 2010-11, because they are the regions where the almond consumption tends to be higher. But pretty quickly after that, we did a research in South which indicated that the South consumers would also be interested in having almonds for pretty much the same benefits. They also want to be healthy. They also are looking for the brain benefit, energy benefit. They also want to do well in life. And we accordingly expanded the program to the South in, I think, 2013 itself. Last year, post-research, we again expanded the program to the East. So basically now it is a pan-India program. So we're running the program North, West, South, and East. Coming to the point of the language, we have played the commercials in Hindi, because we play in one language, but we have the same commercials in different languages. And in the South, we are running it in the regional languages in the channels there. And from the feedback we get as consumers, have been very responsive to our communication as well. That's the feedback we get from the importers and from the trade.
Great. So a couple questions around consumption. The first one focused on, with traditional consumption in India, how come it's so per capita? And how is this kind of based on region, and what do you believe can increase value? And then also when looking at, gifting, is there any coordination, or kind of how are you developing the gifting strategy, and how can that continue to grow as well? So one about kind of self-consumption and traditional consumption, and one about gifting.
So basically, if you look at our program, we are driving both the consumption of mothers giving almonds to the children, as well as adult self-consumption for themselves. And as part of that, we're also driving the traditional morning consumption, which is almonds consumed first thing in the morning, which is the raw soaked almonds peeled in the morning and had. But we're also driving the consumption of snack and other day parts as well. And if you look at any of our broadcast spots, we show actually a combination of both. We show the morning consumption and we show the snack consumption. In terms of indicators of its increasing, we've seen in the past we do strategic research, which is which we call as the AU, the awareness attitude usage studies, the quantitative studies. And what we found is that the consumption in the other day parts outside the morning have also been increasing, as the morning consumption has also been increasing. So we are finding that both these consumptions are actually increasing in India. In terms of the gifting, sorry, can you repeat the gifting question again?
So the gifting question asks, that Indians often gift almonds along with other nuts or raisins. Is there any coordination with those trade groups for festivals related to media and ads? Kind of what is collective approach towards gifting?
So basically, the way Diwali gifts happens, almonds is never given in isolation during Diwali. It's given at the very least with cashews or in a combination with other dry fruits. So to begin with, the way we are not really coordinating with others. We are promoting the gifting of almonds per se, with the understanding that obviously for almonds to be gifted during Diwali, automatically we are trying to increase the share of dry fruits being gifted. So if you're looking at all the products being gifted during Diwali, dry fruits is just a part of it. Then there are many other products which are being gifted, which are both food as well as non-food. We are trying to, number one, increase the share of dry fruits being consumed as or being gifted as part of the total gifting, and within that, we're trying to increase the share of almonds. And we believe that if we drive the gifting of almonds, automatically the dry fruit boxes gifting will also increase because, as I said, it's not gifted in isolation. But within that, we're obviously trying to increase our share as well. I hope that answers it.
So there is a question, a lot of love on the speaker notes for the program in India. And some question, is there increases budget for India, looking at the stellar performance of India market as far as consumption increases have gone? So you do a lot of work in terms of looking across our market prioritization, but would love for you to answer in terms of what you see for India moving forward.
Well, I can talk about the past, and maybe Emily can talk about the going forward. But this year we did have a very sharp increase in the budget from 4.4 to $6.5 million. I think also recognizing the fact that we had a much larger crop to sell, and the market was very primed for growth in consumption. And we're sort of seeing that play out in the market. If you look at the huge growths which have happened this year, it just shows the market is ripe for further growth. And I think what it shows to the market, there's a certain kind of momentum which has been building up. Because while it's nice to talk about the growth in this year, but the fact is over the last 2 years, the growth itself has been very sharp. I mean, if you look at 2015-16, we were only 126 billion pounds. So by last year, we had already doubled it. In such a quick time, we had doubled the volume. And this year, of course, the growth has been sharp. So this year, we do have a $6.5 million budget.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I think every year we make decisions on the markets that we're going to invest in, and ultimately, while staff makes a recommendation, it's the Global Market Development Committee members who make the final decision. But I will say there's a lot of, I think, encouragement and excitement that the committee has for India, just seeing the growth we've seen over the past few years. And as Sadarshan mentioned, we had a pretty significant increase in the budget coming into this year, and so we'll see. I definitely don't think the focus on India will decline anytime soon. And I'm also really excited what we can do with the budget that we have in that market. It is one of the lower costs per impression markets that we have across the globe. And so it's tough to compare market to market how much we're investing. You really have to understand how much we can reach consumers with that money. And we can reach a lot of consumers with $6.5 million in India. So that's what I would say. I don't know, Warren, if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, I would. Thank you. As a member of the GMDC, as Emily mentioned, we go through the budgets very with a fine-tooth comb and look at where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. You can spend a lot of money in certain areas and not really see results. So we're very careful when we're looking at our budget and how it's allocated. And I would say for India is one market where we can really see the payback for the monies that are being spent there. And it's an efficient market. We have good staff there, and there's a lot of potential to go forward. So I think most committee members, I think the committee is high on India, And I think the monies that are being spent there are being wisely spent and very efficient as far as the payback for the dollar. And exchange rates have helped us too.
Absolutely. And another question, which Warren, if you want to take to start, and then I know Sadarshan has a perspective on this as well. How are you projecting growth of shipments in India in the months forward this year? What are you seeing so far in terms of the market dynamics?
Well, I think this year, all you have to do is look at the Almond Board shipment numbers, and you can see just fantastic shipments. Month over month, we have a report coming out next few days again. Next weekend, I think you'll see nice shipments as well. I think there's a few things going on. Almonds are affordable. Almonds are in high demand in India. I think Sadarshan mentioned also there's we're lucky to be called the immunity nut. Not much good out of COVID, but we're the immunity nut, so we'll take that. And I think it's just natural growth in the country. When the country changed their tax to a general sales tax for the whole country, we've seen consumption increase. So I think we're continuing to see newer buyers, newer companies coming in and buying almonds as well. We're seeing some switching from cashews to almonds because of pricing as well. So I think the outlook for this crop year is excellent, and we'll take it. With the crop size that we have. So I'm very optimistic that, it's going to show a significant increase over the 2019 crop.
Yeah, do you want to?
Great.
Do you want me to say something?
Question. Oh yes, please share your perspective.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with Warren there. I think the opportunity is huge in India because the per capita consumption is very low, as I mentioned. And I think unlike the other regions, we have a big advantage of there being a huge heritage, a big tradition of almonds. So, that has been a big help. Along with that, what has happened is that we have been educating the consumers about the health benefits of almonds. And we've been educating them of the need to have almonds every day. And that's since we've been pretty consistent in our program, that's really been building up. We've not been jumping from something to another thing. We've been building from the base that we have and systematically going forward. And that is not playing out for the consumer. And in the current context, in the post-COVID world, people are really concerned about their health and also the kind of benefits we talk about and what your nutrition research has shown that, almonds are good for heart health, almonds are good for diabetes, etc. And we'll notice the morbidities which have happened in India, they tend to be higher with people carrying these diseases. And therefore, that has really opened up to the consumer. They need to take care of themselves apart from taking care of the general nutrition. Immunity, as Warren said, is the buzzword today. And I think it'll stay the buzzword for a while to come. We're talking about vaccines coming in, but I think fundamentally what COVID-19 has done, unlike what the previous infections like SARS did or Ebola did or swine flu did, they didn't really hit India in a big way. So it was like it's happening somewhere else. It's not happening to me. But I think what COVID-19 has done is opened up the fact that Indians can also be affected. And I think to some extent, there's a growing realization this may probably not be the last. So, we may not be severe or whatever, but infections are here to stay. And also, India, unlike many of the other countries in the developed world, have the challenge that we have both lifestyle diseases as well as infectious diseases staying. So infectious disease has been India, is being and continue to be India, and therefore the immunity promise is becoming even more and more relevant. So if you keep all that in mind, and also the fact that if you look at the growths which have happened is more when people start having almonds and they get used to it, it's not that they will suddenly, even if the COVID-19 were to go at some point in time, doesn't mean that they completely change the behavior and stop having almonds. So I think there has been a change in the base level of consumption, which COVID-19 has helped over the natural growth which was anyway happening. So keeping all in mind, I am pretty optimistic.
Great, thank you all. Just one last question before we wrap up and directed at Julie. Are the buyers NOCs required in other industries in India? What's a little bit of a broader perspective there?
Yes, they are more widely required. This is basically a facilities notice, so it's not commodity specific. And we've heard from other commodities that are being shipped to India that they've run into this issue as well. I think we mainly hear about NOCs related to almonds simply because we're such a significant export commodity into India. And so when these issues occur with almonds, it's going to be a larger situation. But we have heard other groups shipping to India expressing the same concerns.
Great. Well, that's it for the Q&A today. I know that people can also attend Sadarshan's office hours and over to the rest of the team to wrap up.